So, hello everyone, this is Michi Hoyer from Avid Chronic Racing, and today I am going to show you something about differential settings on a Formula 1 car. So, for those of you who've seen part 1 of this setup Q&A, there we went about like specific settings for a specific track. We went here for the Marina Bay Street circuit in Singapore with the FSR car. So that's very much about what we're going to do today again. So we just go on where we stopped last time, and as I said already last time, we were about working on this setup here. So this is a Singapore Step 1 version A, and as I already told you, I've did it in part 1. The link for part 1 is stated in the description below. So you therefore can have a look what we established there, what we worked on our set. We obviously started with the base and then went to Singapore's Step 1 version A. And I just gonna quickly rehearse on what we did here. So we went for high wings because it's a high downforce track, many corners, not very long straights, stuff like that. We fixed the gears for this track, so we're maxing out just as much as we need and left us a little bit more room for slipstream if needed. Won't need it through the practice session here. On the suspension, we just had the basics about packers, ride height, same on the rear suspension as well, and a little bit about anti-roll bars. We didn't do a lot on the chassis itself. We pushed the weight distribution a little bit more to the backwards, and on the advanced settings we just kept everything as it is, apart from some camber settings to increase our grip a little bit. As I said, today I want to talk about differential. At the minute this is just the basic setting, so we have 25% on the pump, 18% on the power and 20% on the coast. And today I just want to give you a little bit of an example how this could look like. So with this basic set we just go out and set a lap time, so we will have a good reference at the end of the day. So actually the car is just as it is from part 1 of this setup Q&A, and then we figured out a good and stable set, something you could really work around here at Singapore, and you will then see later on the differences of different differential settings. But before talking about differential settings, I will just give you a base imagination about what differential is about to do. And I just see Martin Stefanko watching me doing this video, and I just saw his comment about the thing with Monza. Yes, indeed, the next FSR race is in Monza, which is in 2 weeks. And I would be happy to see some of you joining us there and supporting Avid Chronic Racing. But for now, the next interesting thing to come up is Singapore in Formula 1, and that's why we're here. So I just gonna reset the time bar at the top and go out to set a good lap time, hopefully. As this then will in the end be a reference to our improvements on the car and on the setup. It's a very narrow track, you really need to drive it very precisely and very carefully. You need to know exactly what you do. A lot of second and third gear corners, as you can see. Suspension not really ready yet for everything, as you can see, so the grinding on that curb at turn 12 before the bridge is quite intense. That would be something you may want to fix for the race. Slightly outbrake myself here. Apart from that little outbraking, I think that was quite a decent lap so far. A little bit wide on the exit of 21.
That lap was a
We set a 1:43.0.
1:43.08.
So, talking generally about differential. The differential is something that you only find on driven axis. So, like in a Formula 1 car, it's definitely the rear axis. And the differential describes the combination or the linking between the left-hand rear wing and the right-hand rear wheel. So when you go through a corner, tires have to travel a different kind of range. So before explaining about that, I'm just going to take you through the general things on differential, which is pump, power, coast, and preload. The pump is the general differential setting overall. So a very high value, it goes between 0 and 100%. A very high value, so 100%, means a complete lock of the differential. That means that the left rear tire is spinning as fast as the right one in every condition. Whereas a pump setting of 0% is exactly the opposite. Like the outer wheel or the left-hand wheel can spin at a different speed than the right-hand wheel. This pump setting, as I said, is pump overall, so it means the differential setting in every condition. However, there is some kind of settings for in-betweens, like power. This means differential setting for just being on acceleration, so being on throttle. And coast is the differential setting for braking, so for only being off throttle. What I do now is take everything full lock. So I set pump 100%, I set power 100%, and I set coast to 100%. The last setting, the preload, that's just some kind of resistance inside this differential, which decides how fast and how massively it kicks in. So if you have it very low and you step on the gas and you have like 100% of coast but 0% of power, your car will probably spin quite soon. However, if preload is high, then the spin is more likely to be catched by you, because the preload, the higher preload setting you have, the more smooth and the more slowly this actual differential setting, so the change between power and coast, kicks in. So with this setting as it is right now, means the rear wheels in terms of speed are locked together in every sort of conditions, and this will create massive understeer, as you will see. And I've just drawn you a little picture here which shall explain you the effective of differential. So we're looking at the right tires, or at the inside tires, the blue one, and the left tires, the red ones on the outer line. And I've just noted some distances. So when you travel with a car through that corner, we just assume that the inside tire takes 80 meters per second, or has to cover 80 meters in 1 second, and the outside tire has to cover 100 meter per second. So if you have a locked differential, which means that both rear tires are locked together in terms of speed, in 1 second both tires will travel the same amount of distance. So you can only imagine that the difference between 100 meters and 80 meters is very difficult to cover, and this will result in massive understeer, which means it just takes you more time to make the corner, because you can make the corner only at like 80 meters per second. But this is the maximum speed, since it will be the speed required for the inside tire to turn, and if the outside tire can't turn any faster, it just means you take longer to go around that corner. So that is basically what is going to happen. As I said, all differential settings are set to full lock, and I'm going to show you the effect on the track and a little bit into lap time as well, obviously, since it will slow us down quite heavily. So what I would recommend to you after the video, like if you want to validate what I just said, you have to just a little bit scroll back and see the car behavior on our 1 minute 43.081, and then yeah, check about what I just said and how the car behaves like. However, if you got some questions towards this, just feel free to ask, and I'm going to re-explain or explain the setting more detailed. And I think most of you can already see that the car is not turning as much as it did before, and you will probably see this the most in slow speed corners. Since there is not much pressure of the air, making the front tires having a good grip. Like at this point, the front tires are scrapping quite a lot, so that is really something. Yeah, you can't really do anything about it. And you probably see it already that I have to take the corners a lot slower. So we're starting our lap. And you will basically see the red bar rising at the top, which is the difference to our 1:43. You can see it rising through every corner probably. It may drop during a straight or during an acceleration zone, since the car is more stable. But you will lose a tenth here and there in cornering. And this is all about the differential setting. You see, I tried to push the car hard. Oh, I hit this chicane just a little bit better than before. But once again in the hairpin I lost massive time apart from the exit. And you have to wait so long until the car turns around the corner. Here I just won because of the outbraking in the fast lap. And now you see the understeer kicking in quite badly. A little bit of a mistake. Not too much of a problem in fast corners though. It gives a lot of stability, that setting, but that was an exact second slower. So you really can see the difference of differential here. So As I explained already, with the rear tires being locked in terms of the speed from left to right, that's what it generates, is a lot of understeer. So we have this pump setting as being in general, and we just set it to 50%, like it's giving us a good balance in terms of lock and open wheeling. So what we do else then is we look at the power. So right now with that differential setting, you're stable on braking, you're stable on accelerating, but your turning is very slow, and you got a lot of understeer. With power being set to 0, you will see the following. Now the rear wheels are not linked to each other when accelerating. That means as soon as I step on the gas, I mean, while braking or while off throttle, the rear tires are still locked, but this locking just disappears as soon as I hit the accelerator, and then the car will start to turn more rapidly. Like the outer wheel is allowed to go faster with that setting. So when I start accelerating, and I come back to the picture here, when I start accelerating, the red tires are allowed to meet the 100 meter per second turning speed they need to make the corner, while the inner wheel still remains at the 80 meter per second required to make the corner that fast. So this is like exactly what you want to have. So it's very important to have to have every differential setting as low as minimum. But now I just want to give you an example of what kind of an effect this has. So we go out again, and now you will see a very understeery car in the braking zones, a very stable car under the braking zones. And when you turn in and you're still off throttle, the car doesn't turn at all, but as soon as you hit the accelerator, the car goes around the corner. Here's the understeer, and there comes the throttle. And you see, now you're very likely to spin. Like here, it's still not turning at all. That little bump here is a bit of a distraction to see it, but I will explain it at other points as well. Now you see that the car is way more aggressive. Here's a lot of understeer, and as soon as you hit the gas, the car swings around. So we just do an in-lap here. Whoops. And then we go for another lap time. And especially here in those slow corners, as soon as you hit the gas, yeah, the car's turning a lot more, which is making life way more easier. So with a sudden bit of gas, you can like countersteer the understeer generated by the bad coast. And now I'm expecting a middle 43 in terms of lap times, since the car is still losing performance compared to our basic set, but the difference is not as high anymore. So in the first couple of corners, only 1.5 tenths rather than 3 tenths of lacking time towards our best time. So this is exactly what I mean, like the exits are a lot more faster if you can manage them now. About the railroad, I've said a little bit of railroad obviously before in testing, just to give me a little bit more confidence on the line. Here you saw the sudden turning because of the differential quite good again. But the railroad is set to static in the end. We got some very interesting guests watching. Hello Sean Cole, also known as the Simpit. Thanks for joining me in here, mate. So as you can see, the low setting on the power actually helps me turning the car a lot, especially in those slow corners, by just giving it a little bit of gas. Whereas the coast is still locked to 100%, giving a lot of understeer into turn in on the corner. Some very nice braking though. And as I just thought, we just score a 43.7, which is a little bit faster than our 44.0 on every differential setting being full locked. Yeah, welcome Sean. I always like to give some good help for others, so if you encounter any questions or anything, just shoot. So we've now seen the effective of zero power being applied to the differential. And we're now going to look at what coast is doing about this. So we're going for the exact opposite. We go 0 on the coast and we get 100 on the power. So as soon as you hit the power now, a massive understeer will occur. Since as soon as you hit the power, the rear wheels are locked to each other, and the management or the differential secures that both tires are spinning at the same speed. And you will see this will have a big impact on quite a lot of things there. For Monza, I would really say you put a very low coast, so you get a good good turn into the corner. But on the exit, you want to be very stable, since you want to have all the traction and carry the speed out of the corner. So you go a little bit higher in power settings. So that's actually right. You go for higher values in power and for lower values in coast. So as you can see already, being off throttle, the car turns quite nicely. It turns a lot better, and you need to really separate two things, which is oversteer and wheel spin. Wheel spin can occur when going sideways, but have both tires limited in terms of the speed. So both rear tires are locked into each other. A high value on the power setting will give you some kind of oversteer when you turn left and right, but and that's what you have in Monza, apart from the parabolica. In Monza you have straight line acceleration zones, and that's where you get massive traction from it. So you now can see the cars turning a lot more. While being off throttle, we lose another bit of understeer to the front. But as you can see, as turning is very important, you can carry a lot more speed through the corner. The time delta is a lot less than what it was before, so it's definitely about the turn-in, which needs to be perfect, and everything else can really be managed. But you will see now in slow corners the turn-in is good, and as soon as I hit the accelerator, there comes understeer in it. And same probably goes for here, that's why I'm going wide and need to correct. Very interesting for this setting is this corner here, since you will shoot wide as soon as you hit the gas. Exactly what happened here. And we go slowing down for the hairpin, wait until the gas can be opened. And then we go out, and you will see again massive time gain on acceleration zone. Oh, I outbrake myself here. And this is probably the part where we're losing the most, because here's turn-in is good, but then you need to speed up through the corners. And this is where the understeer kicks in, and so you really need to wait until fully open the throttle. And you can see the red bar rising at the top. since we always have to wait to go with full throttle. And this is where the high coast, the high power setting really affects. Like it's really, if you have to accelerate out of the corner, unless like here, like where you slow down, go through the corner and then step on the gas while opening the steering, the understeer is not as problematic like on a corner like this here, where you are still steering in, but you need to accelerate out of the corner. Adaka, you just asked about the coast being stability on the braking, and this is basically right, because and this has not too much to do with that drawing, but I will just take it up again. When you come with high coasts, those two tires are locked in terms of speed. So if you are in a straight line braking zone and you hit the brakes, both tires decelerate at the same rate, which gives perfect stability while steering straight ahead. As soon as you turn in and you keep on the brakes, this coast setting, the high coast setting, disables the car from turning, since you know that is the point of time. As soon as you turn in, the left or the outer wheel needs to spin at a different speed than the inner wheel. And with a full coast setting unlocked, both speeds are locked to each other, disabling the car to turn. So you're right, coast gives a lot of stability while braking, but turns into a lot of understeer when turning into the corner. So you want to have some sort of coast which gives you just enough stability while braking, but still enough turning in on the corner. So I give you two different scenarios. When you're braking and turning in and the car's understeering, then your coast is probably too high. However, if you're braking and you turn in and there's the so-called snap oversteer when the rear goes suddenly sideways and you have to slide it through the corner, then your coast is probably setting too low. And in Formula 1, there is a specific type of coast, power for exit, mid-corner and entry, mid-corner and exit. So those Formula 1 cars are much more specific than rFactor 1 will probably ever been modeling it. So you have to find a coast setting that suits best overall for every corner on a circuit. Like here, we do need very less coast, since most of the braking zones are more or less straight, but you have to turn in and make use of this turn in spin or this turn in rotation given by a low coast. So what I do now is I'm gonna show you what impact everything on 0 has, just as I did with everything on 100. The car was massively understeering, and now I fully open the differential setting. So Araka, you just said the high coast is a high degradation on front rubber and low coast is less degradation but with a piece of less stability. So yes, you're basically right, because on a high coast setting, when the rear is locked, the front tires are scrubbing or are being scrubbed by rubbling around the surface because of the massive understeer. It's not like the fronts do not have the grip, it's more the inability of the rear being able to turn. So you need to turn longer in terms of time on the steering wheel, which then costs you a lot of which costs a lot of front tire because of that understeer. And I just saw Fran also referring to coast, saying he's using like 20% of coast on most single seaters. You also have to say that differential is a very personal thing. Like people won't have understeer on the turn-in, oversteer on the exit to make the best possible lap time. Others would just like to have a very stable rear on accelerating and want to have a good turn-in, and therefore maybe want to slide it a little bit into the corner but then have it steadily out of the corner. So differential is something I would really say is personal liking, and that's why some people's setups do not work at all, because you know, if I give you that setup with like zero differential like it is set now, it might be just perfect for me, but it might be just awful for anyone else who favors a lot of more understeery setup. So it very depends on your personal liking, I have to say. While Simone has joined us here, and I'm very happy you're here, mate. Hope you enjoy what I'm doing. I'm gonna show you what's the impact of a fully open differential. So I just stopped the car at the second. If you remember this picture here, now the rear tire is, or the rear tires are separated in terms of speed and linking. That means the left tire, the red tire, or the outside tire, whatever you want to call it, is now allowed to travel at whatever range it wants to travel. Same goes with the inside wheel, so they are not linked to each other at any circumstances, neither on braking, neither on accelerating. And this will give, I can tell you, a ton of oversteer. Of course, the differential setting is only part of a setup, so you could also cover that oversteer or understeer with some settings of your suspension, but obviously not with every setting. So obviously your suspension needs to be able to handle the things the differential is doing, and now you can see the car is waving left and right and is starting to slide, not to slide, to turn, not to turn. It overturns pretty much with that open differential, and you will probably see a new personal best lap time, since open differential suits me quite a lot. But you can already see that the car is sliding very hard through those corners. Like here you can see the car is overturning itself. It just feels unnatural to turn, which giving me the impression of it oversteering a lot. But by pushing the accelerator, I can really like adjust this turning, which is very nice for me personally. So we go out and try to set a new personal best. But it's turning very much at the minute. And this is where you would rate your car to being too like oversteery, like too much turning. Since it gives you some sort of instability and clearly no reliability whatsoever on what the car is about to do next. It turns very nicely, but as I said already, it feels like turning too much on any circumstances. Here you can see the too much turning into oversteer, then the car keeps itself again, and then oversteers again as soon as I hit the accelerator. So there's some kind of pendulum effect inside, and that needs to be fixed by the differential setting. So because it's more easy for me to handle a car with oversteer rather than understeer, and this is some sort of theory like oversteer is easier to handle than understeer, because basically on an oversteery car a driver can really make a difference, whereas on an understeery car the driver is more or less bound to what the car does. So yeah, if I just think about what happened on the lap, and if I keep showing this picture probably for the last time. Now I felt the coast being definitely too low, like on turn-in, as soon as I release the brakes and being full of off-throttle, the car still wants to spin a little bit too much, because the rear tires are not linked to each other at all, and with quite a little bit more linking, I would get a lot of more stability into the car there. Whereas on throttle, it felt quite nice. However, as soon as I hit the accelerator, this oversteer, which just has stopped by waiting on the car to stop its oversteering moment from the low coast, the oversteering reappears. Like I had this at turn, I think turn 7, that is. I quickly show it. It was at this corner here at the back. I'm gonna quickly go towards it. And this is exactly what I mean. Like, I'm gonna do this in slow motion a bit. Now I'm going off throttle, turning in. And now you can see the car wants to spin a little bit. So I go off the throttle, the car turns even more. And I really need to wait. And this is now. Now there is some little bit of understeer, where the car goes back into its natural line. And then I go on the accelerator again, and the car immediately starts turning again in this like dancing effect on the rear. So I have to, and this moment I passed already. Here I go on the throttle, and I need to release the throttle a little bit again, because here the car tends to spin, and I just catch it with counter steering. But this is, and you see it probably more better in faster conditions. Like here's too much of a turn, okay of a turn, and then too much of a turn again. So that's the point where I want to optimize my differential, which means I want to have a little bit more stability on the entry, and I want to have a little even more stability on the outside or on the acceleration zone. And because the overall differential should be right in between, I put those values in here, like a little bit more on the oversteery side, that would be a little bit more on the understeery side. I just take it like that, and I go for a final turn before I will simply sit and answer your questions here. And I just got one of Arakar asking if I'm using the same general setup on any GT touring car. Especially in consideration with the aero. And this is a tough one. I mean, the differential reacts different on every car. It also depends on how much power the engine is producing. Of course, you can change the approach, like if you need a very settled car in like fast corners or something, there the differential probably isn't as much of a problem. So for fast corners, you more or less use the aerodynamic balance on the car. For slow corners, you try to counter steer it with a differential. So that's the way where I can focus on different things. Like the aero does not take too much of an effect in slow corners anyway. So you set the aero perfectly for the fast corners, where you are more or less on throttle anyway, or just some short off throttle moment where differential is not that big of a part. And for slow corners, you definitely lose the differential, like I showed here in this setup Q&A. It were those corners where I am exactly right now, where the correct or an oversteery setting on the power helped me gaining most time. So we're trying to get a personal best in. and now the car is a lot more stable on braking. Well, not a lot, but just that little bit I need to produce better lap times. While I welcome Jim Parisis, thanks for being around. And don't worry, mate, the information here I give is only basics. And the setup is not going to be used in FSR anyway. But you can see from your point of view that the car is a lot more stable and is exactly doing what I wanted to do. Hence why I go a lot faster. It just gives me the right amount of turn while braking. It just gives me the right amount of stability I need in for acceleration out of the corner. I slightly outbraked myself here, but the differential is helping me. And now I just got a little bit too much of understeer while accelerating because of the considerably high power setting. But you know, playing the long game, the car is a lot more stable and you can go literally quicker throughout the stint or throughout the race. And this is why I prefer it mostly. And we come home, setting a 141.4. And like really slowly coming to an end of this setup questions and answers. Like as I set the differential right now, it's very open. Like it allows the car to turn a lot. It allows the car to let them wheels spin to a specific point. And let them be fully independent. So what I could do now is play with the preload to make it either more aggressive or more slowly insensitive. But again, this is just about personal liking. I felt 30 to be quite good, so I just keep it here. And as I mentioned already, we have changed nothing on the car at all. We just changed the differential, so we just call it version B, and we compare our work with version A here. So that you've seen, the car is turning a lot more in general since the pump or the general differential setting is more open. On power, the same. We give it a lot more possibility to turn still while being on acceleration. So showing this picture again, we allow to the red wheels, those, to spin at 100 meter per 1 second, so they can cover the speed of 100 meter per second. And we allow at the same time the inner wheel to only spin at like 80 meter per second in terms of speed. So this helps us to get the car turning and get the car faster around the corner. However, we just need some little bit of stability, and we create it by locking the speed to each other. So it's a difference of torque being used to measure that by the differential. And I don't want to go into like physical details here. So that's why we keep coast at 5%. Basically on those slow corners you really want to have a good turn in, because you need to wait long until you get on the gas again, and the slow corners you travel a lot of like distance without being on throttle, so you want the car to be turning really good. That's why you set it to like 5% in my case. So I just get a little bit more oversteer into the corner and get a little bit more understeer, or let me say less oversteer on the exit of the corner by putting power to 10 and coast to 5, and having a more aggressive rather than sensitive setting on the coast, on the preload, sorry. That helps me, like when I step on the gas, the car exactly or instantaneously does whatever the differential is asked to be done. And there's just that little soft moment of changing, like if you have higher differentials here, like 25% or something, the difference in the differential acting is quite big. So the higher the value, the longer it takes to shift from here to there. And the lower, obviously the faster, and the more close the difference between power and coast, the more smooth, so to say, is the change of differential setting. But anyway, that's it about differential settings. I hope you just like what I did today. Would be happy if you give thumbs up, like, subscribe and share. And yeah, I hope to see you back on my channel quite soon. I'm Michi Hoyer of Avid Chronic Racing, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice week. Have a nice evening.